Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast. We're doing another interview. The season is approaching and we're starting to do our sort of league previews. We've obviously done our Bundesliga preview of Ross and Chris, interviewing Ross Dunbar. Chris has done his interview with Rich Allen, a regular on the pod now basically. And I'm doing an interview today with someone who knows quite a lot about Athletic Bilbao. And it's Rob. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm good, Tom. You've built me up a bit there, haven't you?
I try my best to put our guests in a most comfortable situation as possible, but often fail, obviously.
Looking forward to the start of the season this weekend. It seems as though it's been a long pre-season. I know we've had the Euros, but it's good to have sort of proper football back and being able to focus on domestic stuff.
Yeah, it's been annoying when you had the Premier League and like Liga start, and we're sitting here like, can Liga just start now, please?
You're kind of twiddling your thumbs, aren't you? Saying, ooh,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've had the Austrian League for about 3 weeks now, so I've had that as well. Right, so we'll get into the meat and gravy in that. If you just get you to introduce yourself, basically talk about how you got to sport in Bilbao and building up to the podcast you do as well.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I've always been a massive football fan, both English and Spanish football. Probably one of the things that twigged my interest in Spanish football was it was actually a Spain game, which was my first international match. So not England. So it was at Euro 96 when Spain played Romania at Elland Road. So that was fantastic and twigged my interest of that. And then I guess over the years, you start to develop an affinity and think, right, well, what kind of club do I want to follow? And it was probably around the time of Sky Sports picking up La Liga rights and all my friends going off and supporting Barcelona and Madrid, but I didn't want to do that. So I thought, well, let's pick another club to do, and Athletic was one of those. And I guess for me, one of the things that attracted me to them was you're all probably aware that the club has a basque-only policy, so can only pick players from the local area, and that's really, really interesting. And to see a team that's never been relegated from La Liga in 100 odd years to rely solely on local players was something that really interested me. So I started supporting them around the time of when we had the likes of Fran Yeste and Yusiba Echtabaria and Ismail Ezaiz, and to be honest, those years weren't particularly fruitful. If you look back to sort of 2005 down to sort of 2009, Bilbao were lower league in La Liga, flirted with relegation in 06-07, but then really picked up under Bielsa, and then the new players came through under Llorente and all of those players. So the interest that I had really developed, and it's probably hardened into a steadfast support for the last sort of 5-6 years. About 18 months ago, once I'd been a little bit more active on Twitter, I realised that there wasn't any real source for Athletic fans to get news in English. So I set up my Twitter account, which is at Athletic Club UK. And it's grown from there. So I've got over 3,000 followers, lots of Athletic fans in the UK that engage on a regular basis, probably more than I thought there would be when I originally started that up. And then along with another chap who also does news in the English language at Inside Athletic, we set up an Athletic Bilbao podcast about 5 or 6 weeks ago. So we've just done sort of our pre-season roundups and transfer news, etc., ready to start properly into the season. So you can follow that at Athletic Weekly, and we're on iTunes and SoundCloud. And it's been really fun actually to do that and to get the comments and the various things through Twitter about how great it is to have that podcast and news service, I guess, within the English language, because it's lacking at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. It's always great to see people promoting the Spanish league and in the English language and whatnot. So it's great. Moving on to sort of Bilbao itself, and I want to talk about a bit how they've progressed as a club. Not to go in detail about from their formation up until now, but if you know what I mean. So like I did a bit more research, obviously, because while I do know La Liga reasonably well, I'm not well versed in every club's detailed history.
Yeah.
But I mean, late 20s, 30s, early 40s, they're a very successful team, winning titles. And then there was a bit of a lull, and they peaked again in the 80s, where they won a couple of titles again. And then since then, it's been quite erratic, I'd say. There's been a lot of deviating in positioning and whatnot. And in the last few years, though, they've picked up. As you say, they flirted relegation in the late noughties, and from now, they look a team who want to challenge for the Champions League places, and especially the Europa League places for definite. So, thoughts on the progression and also sort of the reasons why it's picked up in the last few years?
It has picked up, and I think a lot of that is just down to the quality of the players that we've got. The last few years, we've been competing at the top end of La Liga and going quite far in the likes of the Europa League. So, being runners-up in the Europa League in 2012 with that fantastic run we had to the final when we beat Manchester United in their own backyard was excellent. And I actually think the progression that we've had over the years is even more remarkable given the state of the game and the money that's in, and how actually the amount of money that Athletic have in the bank, it doesn't really matter because there's such a small pool of players that you can physically sign. So you can't have a big transfer list at the start of the season and say, right, I want those 5 players, unless they are of a Basque heritage or Basque nationality. So the reliance, therefore, is on the Lezama and the Cantera to bring forward new players, new generations of superstars. And we've been really, really successful over the past sort of 5-10 years in bringing through the likes of Ika Muniain, Mikel San Jose, and then more recently the likes of Iñaki Williams and Sabine Mourinho. What also has helped fire us up towards challenging for the Champions League places is obviously the goals of Aritz Aduriz, who has been an absolute phenomenon over the past 4 seasons. So we had a problem where Fernando Llorente left in certain acrimonious circumstances where he refused to sign a new contract. And he'd been top scorer for us for 4 or 5 seasons. And it was who's going to fill that void, who's going to get those goals. And Aduriz was brought back in for actually what is his 3rd spell at the club. So before his last couple of seasons of goal scoring heroics, he'd never got more than about 15 goals in any one season. And the last 2 spells he had at Athletic were average, okay. I don't think anyone thought that at the age of 35 and 36 he would be banging in 25, 30, 35 goals a season. So over the last 2 years, that has propelled us up the table and allowed us to go pretty deep into Europe, and also the first trophy for a number of years in winning the Supercopa last year when Aduriz got a hat-trick against Barcelona, and San Jose scored that spectacular goal from almost the halfway line. So it is reliant upon the kind of conveyor belt of talent coming through the youth system, and if you don't have that, they are going to struggle because there's very, very few players out there at the minute who I would say would improve the first 11, the first 18, other than maybe the likes of Azpilicueta and Monreal, who we've been linked with recently. But it tends to be the obvious link to make because they are the best Basque players who are out there who don't currently play for Athletic.
Yeah, certainly. I think you highlighted it very well. I mean, you'd speak about the youth setup, and that's the question I wanted to go to next. And as I say, in recent years, it's really picked up. And last season was an absolute joy to be able to watch Iñaki Williams play. I mean, he's just someone you haven't really had for a while in the team. He's quite diverse to what you have with the height and the power and the pace on the wing. And the versatility as well. And I mean, do you want to just go into a little bit about Iñaki Williams? Because I know a lot of people have said to me that, you've just seen him on FIFA or whatnot. And I was like, no, I have seen him play. I know how good he is, and he's someone I'd like at my club Arsenal. But I don't want to talk about that. We're now taking him away from you. But just go for gold with it.
Yeah. So Iñaki Williams is a fantastic player, and already one of the potential stars of the future within the European game, and not just in Spain. I mean, he is a really interesting player in the fact that he is obviously not your normal Basque-looking player. If I'm, not being politically correct or anything like that, but he is of African descent. He's got a Ghanaian father. He's got a Liberian mother, but he was born in Bilbao, so he does meet that criteria to play for the club. And since he joined the youth system back in 2012, he basically broke loads of youth scoring records, worked his way up through the various youth teams to the reserve team in 2013, and quickly became established there as a quick, raw talent who was ready for first team action, and he saw his first team action come quite quickly, and he was put into the squad. And as you say, just a different breed of player. The fact that he can play on the wing or up front shows that he has that versatility, and his speed is lightning quick. I think there was one game last season where I think it might have actually been against Espanyol, Tom, where one of your defenders had like a 15-20 yard head start on him, and Iñaki Williams overtook him in the blink of an eye, and it's just frightening. One of the things that has been labelled against him is he's a little bit of an erratic finisher, but he has improved that over the past sort of 6 to 12 months, and now does look a lot more composed. But he's going to be a really exciting talent, and whilst he's playing out on the wing at the minute, it does look more and more likely that he is being primed to fill in when Aduriz finally hangs up his boots and calls it a day, because Williams can play through the middle, and I think he will offer a different option up front. So if he's committed and wants to stay with Bilbao, I would say that he's probably got 10, 12 years of maybe being the key centre forward for us. And he's just a really exciting player to watch. And if you haven't seen him, go and dig out some of the YouTube clips and watch him this season in La Liga, because he is a phenomenal talent. And we're hoping that we can keep him at Bilbao for many years to come.
Yeah, certainly. He recently signed a new contract as well, which increased that buyout clause that loads of people were going after.
He did, and that's he has been scouted and touted around. So not touted around, but his name is cropping up within the circles of Arsenal and Man City and all the top clubs, because they're always going to have their eye on who are the top talents within Europe, and he absolutely fits that bill. Yeah,
certainly. I mean, there's very quickly. There's other players as well, like you talk about Sabine and Laporte. And Laporte in particular is interesting for a lot of people, because we spoke about the Bilbao way of only using Basque players. Now, I'm aware that Laporte has grandparents that of Basque descent. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And or great grandparents, I think it might be. And so that I'm guessing that's what qualifies him to play for Bilbao, because that's that way back descent of Bilbao heritage, and so it's just weird, isn't it, when you look through like a squad list of players and like Spanish, and then just Laporte sitting there who's naturally French.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a strange one.
It is, but there's also the fact that you have the various regions in France, which are the Basque regions too. So it isn't necessarily just Spanish players who can come from that. You have the Basque regions of France where you can get players through. So the likes of Vicente Lizarazu in the past has played for Athletic, but he's also French. But I think if you ask Laporte, he very much sees himself as Basque, and if you do look at him at the minute, yes, he's been a phenomenal talent, and he is got a lot of potential in him, but he's yet to make an appearance for France. So there has been some discussions as to whether he would switch allegiance to Spain if France continue to ignore him. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure, but I think it just shows where his roots are. And he began playing football pretty young, and he joined our youth system when he was about 15, 16, and he's made absolute strides there. So he's well into the over 100 league appearances now, only aged 22, and with the quality that he has, you had the likes of Man City who were after him this summer, and it actually looked as though he might leave, but quite surprisingly for some, maybe it's not surprising for people in Bilbao, he signed a new deal, and he's committed himself to the club, and hopefully he'll stay there for a while. I think it'd be silly to think that he'd stay there for his entire career, but it's up to Athletic now to try and match his ambitions with Champions League football and continued progression up the table in La Liga.
Yeah, certainly. You speak about matching his ambitions with Champions League football. Now, last season, you only just missed out on that Champions League spot. How did you feel last season went overall?
I think last season was a success. We obviously won the Super Coppa at the start of the year, which was fantastic. We got to the quarter-final of the Europa League, very unlucky to lose to Sevilla on penalties. I think if we'd won that, we would have gone on and won the entire competition. And as you say, very narrowly missed out on the Champions League, finishing fifth. And overall, if you think about it, the amount of games we played last season was, I think it was about 57, 58 games we played in total. And the squad we have isn't particularly big for the reasons that we've just mentioned. So a lot of players had to play a lot of games. And we don't have the luxury of the likes of some of the bigger teams who have big squads and real strength in depth. We had a pretty consistent lineup throughout the season. So it was only expected, I guess, that the form petered off a little bit towards the end. But even though we did miss out, we had a pretty horrific start to the season last year. We were bottom after about 5 games. So to come back and to be challenging Villarreal for fourth right until the wire was a success. But I think this season we need to be stepping up and going further and aiming for that fourth place. Because I do feel as though our squad is of a good standard and has the ability, given some of our rivals have been weakened in the off season, to step up and claim fourth place. You know, top three is never going to happen at the minute. But I think fourth place, if any season in recent history, it's this season that it's up for grabs the most.
Yeah, definitely. So summer transfers is what everyone loves to talk about, media, us, what not on Twitter. But obviously with the heritage of only using Basque players, it does make it difficult for Bilbao to make signings, and it's usually promoting players from the second and third teams and whatnot, and that's what's happened again.
Yeah.
Does that put you at a disadvantage against the other teams?
Yes and no. I think obviously we can't be going out and buying the latest prospects from elsewhere across the globe and building our team that way. But I think if you asked anyone within the Basque region and the city of Bilbao, they wouldn't want that. They would rather see the club relegated with a whole squad of Basque players than win the league with loads of foreigners clogging up the side. That's how strongly the feeling is. So for us, as you said, it relies upon that progression up through. And you do see players tend to stay in the youth teams for a bit longer within Athletic. So if you compare it to, say, the Premier League, where you might have a superstar who's thrust onto the first team at the age of 17, 18, it doesn't really happen at Athletic that way, other than the exception of Mouni Ayin, who started at 16 in the first team. The likes of Iñaki were 20, 21 when they broke through. You look at Sabine as a quality young prospect, but he's actually older than Ike Mouni Ayin, which is quite phenomenal, really. He's only had 1 season within the first team, so he's 24, but he's honed his trade at the reserve team, Bilbao Athletic, and then got his chance there once he's considered to be ready. And what Athletic also make good use of in the transfer market is loaning out players to get experience elsewhere, whether that be to another La Liga team, so the likes of Unai Lopez, who's gone out this year to Leganés, or sending them out into the second tier to get the experience there, where they might not be able to get that within the reserve team. Last year they did, because Bilbao Athletic were in the second division, but they've been relegated back down to Secunda B this year. So there's been a lot of activity in that area, trying to farm out the really, really promising youngsters who do have a future with us, such as Markel Echeverria, Siriondo, potentially Gorka Santamaria, who've moved up and continue to play in the second tier this year with the likes of Cadiz and Valladolid and Elche. But we are restricted by the people that we can buy. So this year, as in physical cash buys, we haven't bought anybody. So Raul Garcia was the last one that we bought in. But we have the likes of Kepa Arrizabalaga, the goalkeeper, Mikel Vesga, Uri Alvarez, who are players who are going to step up to the first team this year and challenge for a spot, which is going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. Looking towards next season then, and I've seen you on your Twitter account, you've put up certain questions about who you want to start where. Obviously, you lost Gapegi, retired, and fantastic servant for the club. Who do you expect to be starting in that back four? Because it can be quite a conundrum at times.
It can. I think for me, the two wing back positions are pretty sewn up. So we've got Oscar de Marcos at right back and Mikel Balenciaga at left back, and both of them played 50-plus games last year. Really solid players, and don't expect anything other than them to start. In the centre of defence, you've probably got two of four that are going to start. Laporte will be the first choice, no doubt. So it's who plays alongside him. And your candidates for that are Xabi Acheta, who's had a good couple of years and has recently made his Spanish debut. You've got Uri Alvarez, who is a really fantastic player who's come up through the youth ranks, who has so much potential, and some actually think he's going to be better than Laporte. And then the other one is Enrico Boveda, who actually is a right back who has converted himself to centre back, and again shows the versatility of the players that we've got in the squad. And he had a run at the end of last season when Laporte was injured at centre back and really, really impressed. So there's quite a bit of chat that he might get the nod to be that starting centre back alongside Laporte, which would be really interesting to see if he does get that nod over at Cheta. But I think Uri will pick up the games that Gurpegi played last season. Gurpegi was a little bit of a peripheral figure over the last couple of years. But he continues to be involved at Athletic because he's just joined the coaching staff. So he's still going to be around and passing on his nuggets of wisdom to the next generation.
Yeah, certainly. The midfield then, I mean, there's a lot more experience there in the likes of Benyai and Raul Garcia, who's a fantastic signing last season and done excellently. And then you got like Itaraspe, who's someone who's been linked with a move away for God knows how many years to the Premier League, I think, and constant links with certain teams. Are those three pretty much nailed on, or is there some youngsters? You've got Mikel Rico in there as well and whatnot. Do you see any youngsters breaking through in the midfield this season?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at our squad, I think the midfield is the best area of the team, where we've got the most strength in depth. And the way in which we play is we usually play with two central midfielders. So last season that was mainly Benyat and Mikel San Jose. It's interesting you mention Itaraspe because he struggled to get in the team last year because he was injured, he was out of form. So that's the kind of position he plays. So he's got to try and force his way back in there and get Benyat or San Jose out of there. We then play with three behind the striker, so a couple of wingers and then a central midfielder behind the striker. Central midfield role will be filled by Raul Garcia, backed up by Javier Rasso. And on the wings, we've got a lot of options. You've got Muniain, you've got Iñaki, you've got Sabine, you've got Susaeta, who continues to play and has had a really good pre-season actually. We've just sold Ibai Gomez, which is sad for a number of reasons, and a lot of Athletic fans are disappointed to see him leave. But I think that shows that we have got that strength in depth that he wasn't going to play too many games. And then you've got the likes of Inigo Leque, De Marcos, who can move forward and play on the wings if needs be. So you have a solid base there, and that's before you've even mentioned the experienced Mikel Rico or some of the young players such as Mikel Vesca and Aguirre Ekeche. So you can see there that you've got a good base of players to select from, and if everybody stays fit, should be able to carry us to some kind of good position this season.
Yeah, definitely. We can pretty much nail on who the striker's going to be. But something I wanted to ask you about, Adarith, is the Euros. Obviously, I was pushing for it during the season for him to be selected. There was no reason why I shouldn't have been with his form during last season, and considering some of the form of the other Spanish strikers going around at the time wasn't at its best.
Yeah.
Obviously, when he played in the Euros, he's not a typical Del Bosque sort of striker, is he? He's not the guy who's going to be the little combination play, the little flicks and tricks and stuff. He's not that guy, is he? So,
he's not.
What did you think?
I think he deserved his place in the squad, but I think it does come down to the fact that there has been a lack of world-class Spanish strikers over the past few years. But you can't argue with his goal-scoring record, given the amount of goals he scored over the past 2 years. He deserved his chance to have another crack at the international stage. Some Athletic fans would argue that they wouldn't like him to play for Spain, see him as Barca, and they want to preserve him for the club side. But I think he earned that shot to have a go at an international tournament. And hopefully he's got another year, another 2 years left in him at the top level at Athletic. So he might continue to score 30, 35 goals next season. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay, well that wraps up the sort of Bilbao main focus part. I wanted to get some thoughts on the teams around you. Because obviously, as going into a new season as an Arsenal fan, I look at the likes of Chelsea and United and how they're going to stack up against us. Usually, probably a lot better in the transfer window than Arsenal might be doing right now. But in Spain, obviously, it's quite different. Sevilla obviously have lost Krikoviak and they lost Gamera, and that's their two best players just been nabbed from them.
Yeah.
They have strengthened well. I like Franco, who's coming from Franco Vasquez. He's done well. And, when you stack those two up, you lost to them in the Europa League. Can you see Bilbao overtaking Sevilla going forward next season?
Yeah, I think when we did some predictions on the podcast last week, we had a discussion about who was going to finish fourth, and we debated both Sevilla and Athletic finished in that fourth position. For me, I think it's how Sevilla deal with that vast turnaround of players that they've had and how quickly that they can gel as a unit. And if they can, and the new manager can get them playing the way and the style in which he wants, I don't see any reason why they can't improve on last season. They can't get any worse away from home than they were last year when they didn't win one game. So even with a few wins under the belt there, should see them start moving up the table. I think Villarreal had a fantastic season last year, but have obviously been weakened by Soldado being injured and Suarez going back to Barcelona. And they'll have the Champions League to focus on as well. So I don't envisage that they'll be finishing in the top four. But it's going to be a big battle. I think if Athletic can start well, I think we can keep up the momentum going forward, and it's going to be a real battle between us and Sevilla, I think, for fourth place.
Yeah, definitely. Some thoughts on some of the other teams then. Celta Vigo did fantastic last season. And a lot of people aren't really aware of how good the club were if they're looking from an outside view, but they've been improving gradually over the years, and it's such an erratic side with the amount of times they've been relegated and then come back up again and done so well. Losing Nolito is obviously huge because he was such a big player for them last season, and they brought in someone called Pione Sisto, who I know quite a bit about because he played in Denmark and was brilliant. Can you imagine them doing the sort of same thing they did last year, or do you think they'll drop down after they've lost Nolito?
I think Nolito's a big loss for them. I think I don't see them dropping down too much. I think that they will be in the mix for the European places, but there was talk last year when they were in their really good run of form of challenging for that fourth spot. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do envisage that they will still be a tough team to beat, especially away from home, and that they will continue to sort of play the football that is pretty attractive. and does get results as well. So I'd sort of see them hovering around 7th or 8th, and if they can, maybe bring in a couple of players before the deadline passes, then who knows? But yeah, we'll see on that one. Keep a watching brief. Yeah.
Yeah, I was shocked with how they did last season because Berizzo has them playing such a high tempo style. I thought they'd burn out by February, and they just didn't. So so it's impressive. I'm going to ask you on my boys, Espanyol. We've got a lot of money in from these Chinese investors, which seems to be happening to a lot of clubs recently around Europe, and we've done reasonably well in the transfer market. I mean, a lot of players shocked me at their arrivals. Leo Baptistao from Atletico Madrid came in, who did reasonably well at Villarreal last season, but he's had a brilliant pre-season. Javi Fuego from Valencia, Roberto, the goalkeeper for Olympiacos, who's very well established. Gerardo from Watford, Piatti from Valencia, and Reyes too from Sevilla, which is, as an Arsenal fan was quite cool to see. And obviously Quique Sanchez Flores came in as manager, which was a brilliant appointment. Considering how he did at Watford, and I was shocked when he got the sack. So, do you see them rising up the table much more than they did last season?
I think they will. I've had a few conversations with people that actually think Espanyol will go down this year, and I've said,
really?
well, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I know you had a pretty poor last season, but you did show some signs of fight and survival instinct towards the latter part of last year, and I think with the additions that Espanyol have made, I think you'll finish top half this year. I think the likes of Piatti and Reyes are fantastic signings. And I think I put them in our pod last week. I think finishing about 8th, 9th. So I think with a good run of results, and that's the thing about La Liga, isn't it? The middle of the table usually gets so bunched up between 8th and 14th that if somebody can go on a bit of a run, you're guaranteed almost to finish in the top levels of those places. It's just about trying to maintain that consistency, which I think was lacking last year. And you saw some absolutely abject performances, but some really good ones as well. Yeah. So it's trying to get to that level of consistency that's going to allow you to fight for that top 10 position.
Yeah, definitely. We can't really not talk about the big three. It's just something you have to do, really. Start off with Barcelona. I mean, they've made some additions. It's not been the sort of, in a way, and ironically to say Galactico addition, where you've seen like the likes of Neymar and Suarez coming in recent seasons. But they brought in good players. Andre Gomez is someone I rate really highly from Valencia, big fee. Samuel Ntiti, who's my friend Chris, who does our Liga stuff, and rates ridiculously highly. And when he came in the Euros, did really well. And then Lucas Digne, who's someone who I thought was an odd sign. He's a good player, but I look at Johnny Johnny Castro at Celta Vigo as someone needs to pinch one of these days. He's a brilliant left back.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they didn't go for someone like him, who's more versed to the league. But Barcelona, what do you think?
I think Barcelona are always going to be strong. The amount of quality that they've got in that team, it's a question whether they can finish first or second. And I'm still debating whether it's going to be Barcelona or Real Madrid who are going to top the pile this year. But if you've got the likes of Messi, Neymar and Suarez who just continue to bang in the goals and continue to break records, you can't really argue with that. And I know the British media went into a bit of a frenzy when Barcelona lost to Liverpool a couple of weeks ago in a friendly and said that Barcelona are in crisis, and it absolutely rubbish. They're going to have a successful year. I think the addition of Umtiti to the back line will improve it, because that is to where Barcelona are weakest. Fantastic and exceptional going forward, but they do have some holes at the back that can be exploited. So it was nice to see them shore up the defence with that addition. But I'm still uncertain if they can topple Real this season. I think Real are going to be my tip for the league.
It's interesting because I look at Real with the additions, and they haven't had a Galactico this season. Obviously, Morata's coming from Juve, which is a good signing. But they've lost some depth in what they've sold with Hesse going out. I know he's obviously the natural in bringing Morata. You lose Hesse and whatnot. Denis Cheryshev, who I really rate as a player, has gone off to Villarreal. I thought he did really well when he was at Valencia last season. And then they've loaned out some of their youngsters. Now, last season, I mean, there were times where I thought they could have done with some of those youngsters playing, especially Asensio, but
Yeah.
that's no bias whatsoever. But obviously they've loaned out Lorente, who's a good defender, and Mayoral, who's a striker. If they get injuries, they could have done with Berghuis, always someone they've sent out on loan. He's gone to Sporting Gijón this time. But you rate them for the league, which is completely understandable when you've got Benzema and Ronaldo and James and whatever else. So yeah, go for gold on that.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's for me, the Real and Barcelona. It's if they can both stay fit, if both the teams, keep a decent injury record throughout the year, it's fine because the superstars play, the superstars perform. It's an interesting point you mentioned there about the depth. And I think that's where it comes into its own because over the past few seasons, if you've looked at a bench where Madrid and Barcelona have been playing, where they've had a few injuries, it has looked pretty weak. And that strength in depth, because of the fact that they've relied solely on this core group of players, can be problematic. So, yeah, I think I would have thought that some of those players that you mentioned there would have stayed to provide that extra competition and extra cover. But as is the thing in Spain, a lot of Spanish clubs decided it's best to send their players out on loan for a season, let them develop elsewhere, and then get them back when they're absolutely ready for the first team picture. So it's a lottery, and if they do get 5 or 6 injuries and Ronaldo gets hit by something, it could go either way. But at the minute, and that view may change after week 1 when we see them play,
Yeah.
I had Real just pipping Barcelona.
Nice, fair play. And obviously, as always, there's the team that has been recently challenging them two in recent years with Atletico. My team of choice for the three every season, just because I hate Real Madrid and Barcelona. Complete unbiased view in this podcast. But obviously they've made some great additions, and they've done well not to lose some of their better players as well, which I think puts them in a great position. The likes of Kevin Gamero coming in from Sevilla, who's probably going to start next to Griezmann. Or Glazman, as he likes to be called, and you've got obviously Torres up front with there as well, and they've got other players who can back that up. And Nico Gaitan, who's someone from Portugal who's always been linked with a move away. Manchester United have always been interested, but he's gone to Atletico. Rosalco from Sassuolo, who our Serie A expert John loved and thought he was one of the best right backs in the league. And then a guy called Diego Jota from Pacos Ferreira, who not many people know too much about, but I've spoken to people who watched him and said he's brilliant and he'll go on to be one of the better players at Atletico when he progresses, if they can keep him. But surely the best part of their business is keeping Griezmann, and he's still being linked with moves away to the likes of Arsenal, who are apparently going to put a £70 million bid in, but I cannot see it happening at Arsenal. But you never know. So, do you think they're going to challenge the top two as much as they have done in recent seasons?
I think they'll be there or thereabouts. I think it again depends if Simeone can get the best out of them. I think, as you say, keeping Griezmann is an absolute masterstroke, and I think he's quite happy where he is. For Athletic fans, Griezmann is a bit of a sore point because we did actually pass over the opportunity to buy him quite a few years ago when he was a relative unknown, but the club were unwilling to pay the minimum fee release clause to get him out of his contract. And looking back with a bit of hindsight, was that a mistake? Probably was, given how much he's progressed and developed. But yeah, I think Atletico will challenge. I think they will finish third, but they have been narrowing the gap, and obviously have won the title over the past few years. So they will be strong, just in a different method and a different way of playing that Real and Barcelona do.
Yeah, certainly. Before we wrap up, just the other end of the table, You've had people cheekily say Espanyol could go down. But obviously, we've got teams like Granada who seem to always just escape the drop, as per, and I think they did on the penultimate game of last season. Las Palmas came up last year and did really well. I thought they were one of the red herrings of the season that just kept going, kept winning with the likes of William Jose and Jonathan Vieira, who were brilliant. Eibar, another team who miraculous rise through back-to-back promotions, and then they've sort of established themselves now. And even though they normally have second half of the seasons which don't compare to anything, and then you got the teams that have come up with Leganes and Alaves and Osasuna. So. Leganes is a team that Bilbao they have a bit of a relationship with, don't they? And they loan a lot of players and whatnot to them to improve. So out of those teams, do you any surprises could go down, or anyone's dead cert to stay up?
I don't think there's any surprise. I mean, the three that I have to go down are Granada. I think that they always flirt with relegation. I think their time might be up this year. Sporting, I think, are always going to be down there. I think Leganes will struggle in La Liga this season. I think if you look at the likes of the other promoted teams that have come up, I think Alaves will be okay. I think Osasuna will be okay. Two obvious other basque clubs which are going to be interesting derby games for Athletic this year. But yeah, I mean, Eibar, such a small club and a fantastic story. But they've shown time and time again that they continue to dumbfound the critics and prove them wrong. And I think they'll be okay. I think Las Palmas have enough quality to survive. But you've probably got 3 or 4, maybe 5 teams where you would expect them to be fighting out towards the bottom end of the table. But those are the 3 for me who I worry about and would consider to be the favourites to go down.
Yeah, fair play. I think we've covered all bases pretty well until the end of it. So that's great. I have to ask you the quick couple of questions we ask all our guests when we come on, and that is for your favourite hipster player. I don't know how much you've even listened to the podcast. If you want me to describe what hipster is for you,
I have listened to it, but I'd be interested to rehear your definition.
Okay, so it comes down to 3 sort of bases, really. It can be 3. First of all, it's going to be any player from current or past football. Hipster can be someone who's not particularly heard of in the footballing community that you think deserves more praise. What they do go quite under the radar. It can be someone in the past who didn't get the credit they might have not have got in today's sort of football. Like I look at someone like Liam Brady at Arsenal, who if he had played today, he'd be like a 50-60 million pound player. And then you got the person who's a youngster like now, and you think it's going to come up and do great things. So that's the best I can give you.
So I think I'll pick 2 players in that sort of hipster and one who currently plays, one who recently played for Athletic. So I'm going to go with Julian Guerrero, who was an absolute superstar for Athletic. But if you talk to a number of people who don't know too much about Spanish football outside of the last 10 years and the Real Madrid, Barcelona dominance, maybe don't know who he is, but he played for Spain a number of times. He was a fantastic central midfielder who spent his entire career at Bilbao, rejected Barcelona, Real Madrid on multiple occasions to play with his hometown club and the club in which he supported as a boy. So, that is very, very rare these days, and very rare to see somebody progress and play to such a high level and continue to want to play for their local club. I think within the current squad, Mikel Balenciaga, who's our left back, is a little bit of an unsung hero. He's one of these guys who takes on the challenge of Movember every year and sports quite frankly ridiculous facial hair at various times throughout the month. And he's just one of these unsung solid players who will continuously play 50 games a season but never really get any credit for it. He's up and down the left wing. He creates so many chances for us. He's solid at the back, but he's not what you would call a superstar and won't get recognised at international level because of that. So those are my 2 choices there. And a youngster who's coming through that's worth keeping an eye on is a lad called Inigo Vicente, who is think he's 18 years old and was just playing with the juniors last season and was promoted to our third team, Baskonia, towards the back end of the year. He's done so well in pre-season that he's actually been moved to the Bilbao Athletic reserve team squad. So, and he's been scoring loads in pre-season, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him within the first team within the next year or so. Such are the reviews about him. So the likes of him and Peru Norskayan and Kepa Arrizabalaga, we are blessed with a number of players who are under 21 who are going to be fantastic players in the future.
Nice. All good. I think you've hit the nail on the head there and covered all bases.
Good.
So, yes. Well, thanks, Rob. I hope you've enjoyed the interview. And I'm sure at the end of the season we can come back and revisit how Bilbao surprised everyone and won La Liga.
We can but hope, can't we?
We can, certainly. So as I say, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sure we'll definitely have you on again. So, yeah.
Lovely. Thanks, Tom.
No worries. So thanks, guys, for listening to the Football Hipsters podcast. You can check out all of our previews for the coming season. Our first podcast of the season will be back, as I'm well told by Chris, although with how busy he is these days, things can change, on Monday. So that should be out for next Tuesday for you. And all we can pray for is a La Liga season filled with highs, lows, everything you can get for an Espanyol win at one point would be nice. So thank you for listening to the Football Hipsters podcast. Check us again soon. But quickly, keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy. Didn't forget it. Chris is going to kill me.